are going to receive two presentations. The first is a presentation, an annual report from Assistant Manager Operations Supervisor Brian Weber of the San Mateo County Mosquito and Vector Control District on the district services to the city of San Bruno. You're on.
Okay, good evening, everyone. Okay, so as said, I'm from San Mateo County Mosquito and Vector Control. We've been protecting public health since 1916, so we did just celebrate our centennial last year, so we've been in business, so to speak, for over 100 years. Our mission is to safeguard the health and comfort of the citizens of San Mateo County through a planned program to monitor and reduce mosquitoes and other vectors. Vectors are something that can give you a disease. These are some of the critters that people do not like that we cover. So everyone knows the mosquitoes, but people call us related to fleas, cockroaches, bed bugs, rats, yellow jackets, raccoons. And we even respond if somebody says, I'm getting bit or I'm itching and I don't know what the cause is. So all kinds of things. So we operate, the bulk of what we do is control of mosquitoes, and we do that through an integrated pest management program. Basically what that is using all the tools available to us. At the top right there you can see, I don't know, there's surveillance. What that is a CO2 trap. It uses dry ice to mimic us breathing. The fan will catch mosquitoes in a net, and that'll tell us what type of mosquito we have, how many there are. It'll give us our technicians a better idea where to look for those mosquitoes. Next, our biological controls. Those are mosquito fish right to the right of that trap. And we distribute these up to 20 pounds a year in swimming pools, fish ponds, anything that's man-made. We're not allowed to put them in creeks or anything like that because they can outcompete the native fish. Physical control. Physical control can be dumping out pots or saucers in your backyard to a large project like this in Redwood Shores where they're actually destroying a levee to flood a diked-off area. Larval and adult control. So that's a lot of times where we come in where these first three components do not work. Then that's where we would come in. You can see a technician here is working in the marsh, and our truck right there is doing adult control. That would be if we ever detected West Nile virus. And lastly, of course, we do public education in schools, things such as this, and so forth. Okay, so specific to the city of San Bruno. So we have 207 active inspection sites. Those could be a swimming pool or a fish pond to something I'll show you later as large as Mills Field, which is across from the San Francisco airport, as most of you know. In 2016, we had 73 service calls, and we collected 98 mosquito traps. So 98 mosquito traps would be that first one I showed you. And what's important about that is it gives us an idea of the health of your community and, like I said, the mosquito abundance and populations. So what is a site or inspection site? I mentioned this before. Here are just some examples: catch basins, flooded areas, buckets, containers, fish ponds. And how do we find these things? Your residents call in and they say, I'm getting bit, or my child has some red bumps on them, something like that. Our technicians come out and visit. They'll do an inspection of your property to make sure you have nothing on the property that could be breeding mosquitoes or anything like that, or any vectors. And then we will go and talk to your residents, check the backyard, and educate the neighbors just to make sure that they don't have anything like these swimming pools or containers or catch basins in the backyard. So it's kind of a community-wide effort. Okay, so this is kind of a snapshot of 6 months worth of service calls in the city of San Bruno. What I like to show here is there's calls throughout the entire city. So it shows that we're reaching all the residents, and this is what I see in actually most cities. So that makes us happy that all groups of people are calling, all neighborhoods are calling. So I like to show that snapshot. Those are locations. Okay, so here's some interesting calls related to the city of San Bruno. This is one where we worked with your code enforcement officers. Someone was calling about bird feeding and particularly pigeon feeding. So we would go out and help the code enforcement officer write a report, say why it's unhealthy in that particular location, and that would help bolster to help your code enforcement officers write a citation or whatever they needed to do with that information. Something else was this, we did get a lot of calls about this. We called it the theater site. I don't remember the exact location, but we were monitoring that, and we still continue to monitor that for over a year. It sounds like that mainly it's taking care of itself through construction activities, but this is something we monitored on a monthly basis and treated for mosquitoes as needed. Okay, so as I spoke earlier, this is an overview of Mills Field. You can see San Francisco Airport across the street. So typically what we do, starting in July, it may be sometimes earlier, is we do helicopter applications of a larvicidal bacteria. So a larvicidal bacteria means that we're killing the immature stage of mosquitoes with a naturally occurring bacteria that when applied to the water, it only kills mosquito larvae. So that's very important. As I spoke earlier, we had over 200 sites that we were currently inspecting in San Bruno. The importance is when we know where the water is, if we can't remove it, we can use those biological materials that only affect mosquito larvae. So this is just a nice overview, but this is, sometimes we treat up to 30 acres of this with a helicopter. And here's a neat image. This is the loaders for the helicopter company, but this is one of our technicians flying with the pilot, and it gives you some perspective on what happens out there in Mills Field after a long winter. This is another project that occurred in Mills Field. Your Public Works Department did a great job. We coordinated with them, and they found this was an abandoned line that actually it ended in Mills Field. And the Public Works Department was able to seal that off with this material, so that way we didn't have to apply any pesticides in that particular instance after the first initial time we found it. So that was a huge help from your Public Works Department that we really appreciated. Okay, so quickly, West Nile virus activity in 2016. I just quickly want to go over how we find West Nile virus in this county. We do test mosquitoes and birds in-house. So one of your residents may call, and what we do is we go retrieve that bird. We test it in-house. We have the equipment to do that. We test it for West Nile virus. If the bird's positive, we put 20 of those traps that I showed earlier in a half-a-mile radius around that bird. What we do is collect mosquitoes in those 20 traps. We bring them back to our laboratory the next day, and we test them for West Nile virus. If those mosquitoes have West Nile virus, that's when we would need to do an adult pesticide application, which most individuals would call fogging. So none occurred in San Bruno last year, but you can see we had 15 positive birds out of 136 tested, so that was about 11% were positive. No human cases in San Mateo County. This quickly just shows a map. We did have 5 positive mosquito pools. So a pool is a fancy word for a group of mosquitoes. So one of those traps may collect 3 mosquitoes all the way up to 100. That typically doesn't happen, but it's usually in the lower numbers. A pool just means that trap. So we collect those traps, we test them, and so we had 5 positive pools last year. I believe the closest positive bird was about in Millbrae to you guys, but the closest positive mosquito pool was roughly in the San Mateo-Foster City border there. Okay, so I just included this slide because Zika virus has been in the news. Something that a lot of people don't know is San Mateo County does not have the mosquito that can transmit Zika virus. So although we may have individuals in the county that have traveled and come back with this virus, we don't currently have the mosquitoes that can carry it and transmit it to humans. So the map here on the left is showing the suspected areas that have those mosquitoes. We are included in that because we did find them 2 years ago, but we have not found them since. The one on the right is actual human cases of West Nile virus in 2016 in the United States. So my point of what I'm trying to get here is that West Nile virus is actually still the threat, although Zika virus, took the media by storm. So this is just a quick reminder here that West Nile virus is a moderate risk, but all these other diseases carried by those tropical mosquitoes that we don't currently have, the risk is extremely low. And I just want to give a plug for our open house, April 18th. Everyone's welcome. We're 4 to 7, but we're also taking Boy Scout troops, students, or anything like that at noon. So we grouped them together last year, but we want to give more attention to the children this year. So that means everyone's welcome. If you have any questions, you can contact the district, but you can see our equipment, and we'll have a lot of fun things for children to do. We had a lot of activities last year, and people enjoyed themselves last year, so I would recommend everyone attending. So here's our information, and does anyone have any questions for me?
Brian, thank you very much. Just a quick question. Any extraordinary steps you think you'll need to take after these rains that we've had and upcoming rains? I know San Jose is being alerted to potential mosquito, a big influx because of the flooding they've had down there. So they're scrambling now. So anything you're gearing up for, especially going forward?
Right. So we do see more standing water. Most of it will be gone by the time the summer comes, and West Nile virus is more of a concern. On the peninsula, as you know, there isn't much open space. So there are a few areas, but they kind of have capacity, and the marsh capacity gets to a certain level, and it typically overflows into a channel, then into the bay. So although we would expect a little more work on a larger scale, probably not as much as you would typically think.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah. Any other questions for Brian? Good. Thank you very much, and a shout out to Robert Rekel, who is our representative on the board. Thank you very much, Robert, for all the work you do. Great.
Thank you.
Our second presentation is great. We're going to receive comments from District 5 Supervisor David Canepa, San Mateo County.
Thank
David,
you
welcome.
very much, Mr. Mayor. Thank you to the staff. It's great to see the council and Councilmember Medina in particular. It's been 40 days, so it's really been quite an experience. I know everything. No, I'm just sarcasm. I'm just kidding. But no, it's really been sort of an enriching experience. I'm fortunate to be on a board, as you know, that has a tremendous amount of experience. So Warren Slocum, who served as our chief elections officer, as well as the assessor. Don Horsley was the sheriff for many, many years. And then Carol Groom served on the city council. And Dave Pine, obviously, who represents the district adjacent to me, has done tremendous work. So it's been a great experience so far. I just want to kind of tell your viewers and you what the district looks like and so forth. So obviously Brisbane is a part of my district, Colma, Daly City in its totality. I do have an unincorporated area, not like Mr. Horsley's unincorporated area. My unincorporated area is a little smaller. It's called Broadmoor, which is surrounded by Daly City. And then I have portions of South City. So if you know where Westboro is, in that area. So everything west of 280, and the farthest southern part of my district would be, I think it would be, correct me if I'm wrong, where the old Sambo was, then it was Baker Square, and then I think it's Sherry's. And so that's the cutoff line of my district. So our office is doing a lot. We've convened about 5 workshops around EDAPT. I don't know, many of you know Nicole Fernandez used to work for Senator Jerry Hill. So we've had workshops in Brisbane, Colma, Daly City, South City. Hopefully we'll get one into San Bruno. But basically making people aware of financial and elder abuse. And what's rather interesting is the amount of people and the attendees that have gone to this. It seems like there's a lot of interest. By the way of background, in terms of committees that I serve on, I'm the chair of the Office of Emergency Services. Mr. Ruane had referenced, the incident, which was a rather large incident in San Jose. The board had declared this morning in previous weeks declaration of emergency in some areas because of the amount of water we receive, specifically in the La Honda area. There are about 4 or 5 houses that were red tagged. So I'm here tonight just to say I'm willing to work with you folks. One of the things I wanted to share with you and your staff is each district is appropriated a certain amount of money, and that money is discretionary. It's been used. I'm sure you've used some of those dollars. I know when I was with the city of Daly City, we had the opportunity to use, I think, Supervisor Tissier, who was the previous supervisor, gave us about $175,000 for the library. And I think she was able to give, it was $300,000 to Brisbane. So more than willing to work with your staff on those issues. There is a lot of interest, obviously, relative to that. We're going to have, in our office, we've developed sort of an RFP, an application process, in moving forward with that. And so we just want to make sure that we're transparent and that there's a process to that. In closing, I just want to invite you something I think is going to be fun, or I hope it's going to be fun. We've started, it's called District 5 Together. And so while Daly City is the largest city, it's about 64% of the district. I do represent other cities, and I want to make sure that I'm reaching out to those cities. So on March 18th, and I'll leave this with your staff, we're having a cultural and resource fair. But more importantly, what we're doing is we're providing District 5 residents with different resources. So we talked about SMC Alert. So if something happens relative to an emergency, you can get texts, whether it's people who want to access health care. So we have about 27 tables, which is rather, when you think about it, it's rather amazing. And so we want to make sure that we're the conduit for people in our district to get information they need. So what I'll do is I'll leave this with your staff. Again, it's March 18th. It's at Jefferson High School, which is located in Daly City. So, Mr. Mayor, I could take any questions if there are any questions at this time.
Any questions for our new supervisor?
Great.
March 18th, I hope you get a good crowd because it's the morning after St. Patrick's Day, so you never know.
I'm sure they can figure it out. I hope they can. I hope they can.
I'm sure they can. So
we do have Irish dancers, though,
good,
Mr. Mayor, so
great.
That might be an allure.
Well, if you have the flyers, you can give them to the city
Sure.
clerk there,
I'll give
and
it to
she'll
your
pass them to us later, or anybody else that would like a flyer, too. So.
Sure. The time is 11 a.m. to 2 p.m.
Great.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Mr.
Thank you
Mayor,
very much.
Might I ask Supervisor Canepa a question?
Please.
Sure.
People may not know that you actually serve a small
Yeah.
portion. Your district covers a very small
Sure.
portion of San Bruno. I won't put you on the spot, but it's generally in the far northwest corner of the city. Is that correct?
Yeah, so it's the areas of Sharp Park that I serve. I also serve, so the Church of the Highlands, I think it's called Portola. And then it's up to Skyline, so we're Marisol Places. Those are the areas that I serve. And there's one big community I forgot. And I think Neil, what's Neil's last name? Not Neil Tolford. Who's the fellow who lives in Fleetwood? I forgot his name. He's a police officer. Okay, so whatever his name is. But sorry, thank you. That's the city manager being conservative. Thank you. But Fleetwood as well. So those are the areas that I serve relative to that. And it is it's a relatively small portion because when you look at Dave Pine's district, it's a majority of of San Bruno.
Great.
All right.
Dave, thank you very much.
Maybe a, quote, small, but a very important part of our community, as every part is.
It's quality, not quantity.
Thank you, Councilmember Medina. I appreciate that.
You're welcome, Mr. Supervisor.
Dave, thank you very much.
All right, you guys have a good night. Thank you.
Okay, great.
Thank you.